On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
All right, everybody, I'm here with Derek Somerville of the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. Derek, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to start off by thanking you for having me on. And, it's something I've been listening to this podcast for a while now. And I just want to thank you for pushing this forward and, just pushing our department as a whole forward in baseball. I think it's something that doesn't go unnoticed by me and kind of the time and effort it takes to put this together. So I just want to say thanks to start. Yeah, just a little bit of background on myself. I'm going to be in my 8th season in professional baseball coming up here. 6 with the Arizona Diamondbacks, 2 with the Giants before that. And last season I was in AAA at Reno. This year I'll be kind of doing a couple different roles. One of them is assistant coordinator at the minor league level, and then Latin American strength and conditioning coordinator. And then another part of that is kind of we're having this pitching lab / performance lab being built. So that'll be another kind of role that I have this year, is kind of putting that together, which I'm super excited for, something that's, super new for us and be an awesome challenge to kind of push that forward as a whole too. So looking forward to this season coming up for sure.
So the reason I wanted to have you on, like we were talking off camera, is you had presented at our winter meetings for the PBSCCS, and you were with one of your hitting coaches on just collaboration between the strength department, the baseball side, and just kind of connecting those two. And I think that's where the game is going. And like selfishly, I heard you speak and I was like, I got to talk to this guy, if nothing else, just for my own knowledge. Like if nobody else wants to listen, like, I don't care. Like I need to talk to this guy. So selfishly, I'm like really excited for this. And also like, if I'm ignorant to something, like, just please excuse that. Like I literally just want to learn from you all the things you're doing. So let's just kind of kick it off, and that'll be kind of our topic of discussion here, and we'll just kind of roll with it. But just, working with the sport coaches for player development, just first and foremost, like screening wise and communication wise, like what are you doing to look at your players and then like taking those screens and that communication and kind of expanding it outward? So kind of go over your process with me, if you would.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is something that for me took an interest to over the last couple of years. I think Eugene Bleecker came out with this book called New School versus Old School. And that really opened my eyes to, not just the X's and O's of strength and conditioning from something I was used to before that. Maybe just transitioning and bridging that gap too from, the stuff we do in the weight room and how we see movement to how coaches see movement and how we can kind of work together for building a plan that, can help our players get better, because that's the ultimate goal. So just from learning from him and kind of the stuff he's put out there, just developing my lens for movement and what I look for, and then getting to know what, Shorty was the guy, Rick Short was the guy at our presentation, worked with him at AAA last year, kind of, where he's coming from and things he looks for making our guys better. So I think just understanding the two different lenses of movement is where I would start. Screening wise, we have kind of our PRI screen that we do with our guys. It's more of a kind of range of motion, really get specific with degrees, seeing where guys are locked up as far as bony positioning and stuff like that. So that's kind of maybe a spot I would start. And after that, if there's, restrictions or not based off what we see, it's always a conversation with Rick and kind of what he sees with guys. Because ultimately, I'm not the one pushing the performance side as much. I'm trying to get, information from him and what he sees and what he's wanting to do with guys, because they're ultimately his athletes. And I'm just trying to be a resource to help him get our guys where we want to get them. So.
Yeah, that part always is interesting to me. Is like, we do our screens for the weight room and we deem, if a guy's a good mover in certain qualities and not, and even like table tests versus like standing tests, like have different meaning. And then those guys go to the cage or they go on the mound, and then the pitching coach and the hitting coach see something and it's like, well, no, he scored well in our screen. It's like, well, okay, but he's not able to do this move here. Like, can we work on that? So do you have you seen that before?
Yeah, 100%. I think the neural system, the central nervous system is a big role in kind of transitioning the two. Like I can have maybe the range of motion passively, but if my brain can't control it and I struggle to do what I'm trying to do on the field, then I think that's a gap too we try and hit. So that's why I usually start with the conversation with the skill coach and see what he sees and any restrictions he's seeing. And then, if we get like some video data or some, whether it's TrackMan or maybe the KVS stuff to back it up where the restrictions are, I think that kind of allows us to dig a little bit deeper into trying to understand why he's having issues doing what he's doing. And then from there, we can maybe make a game plan together and challenge him to find new ways to do it himself versus us just giving him the keys of the test too.
How frequently are you having those conversations with coaches? Is it something that you like formally plan in your day, or is it just kind of in passing? Like, oh, hey, by the way, like how's so-and-so doing in the cage?
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to create as much conversation as possible with whatever coach it may be. So for me, that's definitely, something that's maybe not planned to start. Just try and, talk to them as informally as possible just to keep that conversation going. And, I obviously don't just start with only work stuff too. So it's getting a little bit more of a personal relationship with the coaches to start. So they know that every time I come to them, it's not about, oh gosh, what's you got for this guy this time? So I think that relationship part of it is huge to start. And then, like I said, I think for me, informal is better. Like I can go by and me and Rick talk all hours of the day, whether it's, I'm out there in the cage watching a guy or he comes in the weight room and sees what we're doing. And the only time we really make it formal is if we're trying to get like a specific game plan for a guy. Be like, all right, you see this with him, I see this with him. Let's maybe sit together for 20 minutes and game plan what we're going to do with him tomorrow. And then we'll attack that. So Rick knows exactly what I'm going to do with the guy in the weight room, transitioning to the cage. And then I know exactly what he's going to do to the cage, so I can have the athlete. We can give as much information as possible.
One of the things for me, like I've always wanted to do this kind of collaborating with baseball coaches, but in the minor leagues, I found it very difficult just balancing like the nutrition and the day-to-day strength and conditioning stuff, and then the sports science stuff we were doing, and then even like just, quote unquote, like mental skills, like not to butcher that, but there are guys that come to us and open up about things. So I found it really difficult. And then this year being in the big leagues, you have all those people around, and there's a second strength coach and a mental skills and nutritionists and chefs. And like, so it opened up more time for me. And that's why I'm wanting to have this conversation, is because I'm ready to take that next step in my mind. And I started having those conversations, especially with one of our hitting coaches. I've gotten really close with him. Like I went and visited his facility, before Christmas, and just kind of chat with him. Do you find that like sometimes it seems like it's hard to find time in the day? Like how are you managing like still being a strength coach, but still being able to do these conversations? And it might be org to org, because like, I don't know what you guys do nutrition wise, but like we were full on, like we had to order the food, we had to do all the budgeting, all of that stuff, where some orgs take that off your plate. So how are you finding time to balance all of that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm still having nightmares about ordering food in AAA last year. So I totally get where you're coming from there with, we have a bunch of jobs to do, and you want to get them all done really well. But for me, especially at the minor league level, like we're strength coaches first, right? So we got to have that program set up and ready to go. And that has to be elite before we try and get really deep into some other things that are maybe not necessary for day to day. So I think kind of understanding what our job is and what we need to do each day first and what the priority is, and then we can kind of build off that as we go. So for me, thinking about trying to get those reps, like in general with kind of how our day goes, it's our busiest time is before and after the game, right? But during the game, especially while the starter's still in, there's 5 innings ish where we're just kind of hanging out and watching the game. So I would take advantage of that time to be right on, Shorty's shoulder, seeing what he's seeing with guys in their swings and stuff, and have those conversations there, because it's better than me just sitting in the office and, I'm trying to at least get with him and what he sees in the game, and then maybe we can game plan from there. But just kind of knowing where your ins and outs and downtime is a little bit helped me with, my priority is to make sure the day functions well, but after that I can pick and choose maybe what I want to do with the little bit of downtime we get during the game. So that worked well for me last year.
That's super important for me. Like I said, I think the game is going this way. And like I said, in the big leagues, there's just more resources, there's more people. So I personally felt ready to start taking these things on. But in the minor leagues, I didn't, because I always thought like, I'm a strength coach first. I need to have my daily routine flow well. And this is kind of just like that icing on the cake, where like, if I don't have the cake, there's no need for icing type of deal. And so I just need that to be like reiterated. And it's very refreshing to hear that from you, that like, yes, we're doing these things, but I'm still strength coach first. And I think some younger coaches that are trying to make an impact are like, oh, I'm going to go hang out in the cage all day because I can change things. And it's like, you're missing the point of like, the weight room's a mess. Conditioning is all over the place. You're not running stretch. Like, take care of the stuff that you're hired to take care of first. And then when you do that really well and really effectively, then you expand to those other things.
Yeah. In my mind, you have to earn the ability to do the other things that are the icing on the cake. Like you said, like at the end of the day, our job is to keep our guys healthy and keep them on the field. So if I'm not doing my best effort for that first, then it doesn't matter if I help him with his swing, if he's, getting injured because I wasn't around to help him get a warm-up routine or can like maybe program his lift right. So that's definitely for me the priority, because we are strength and conditioning coaches. That's my job title. But then on top of that, once you feel like you have that running smoothly where you could potentially leave the day and it functions as is, then you can maybe focus some other tokens on helping those guys out in that way too. So
yeah, I love that. I'm fully in agreement with you on that, but couldn't be more in agreement. And then the other thing you talk about is like being on the hitting coach's ear during the game. And I think it's interesting to me, like I just thought of this, right? Like in the minor leagues, like we're developing as well, right? Like players are trying to develop to become major league players. Most strength coaches in the minor leagues probably aspire to be in the big leagues, and we can be developing. And I think if your coaches see you as like, hey, I'm trying to develop as a coach and like make this better, they'll let you be in their ear and you can kind of chat during the game, because it's important to win in the minor leagues, but it's also important, obviously, to develop players. And I think it's the same for strength coaches. Like, we can still develop as people. And like, if you're just bothering the hitting coach or the pitching coach during the game, they're gonna be like, dude, leave me alone, please. Like, I got a game going on. But if they understand that it's like for your own personal development, they'll be like, hey, come on over. Let me show you what I'm seeing. Like, this guy doesn't have internal rotation here. This guy doesn't get into his glute here, whatever the case is. And so I had never like thought of that, because I always thought I would just be a bother to the coaches. But like, it just kind of clicked. It was like, okay, if we're all in this together, even the baseball coaches themselves, right? Like, if you're a AA hitting coach, you probably aspire to be a big league hitting coach, right? For the most part, right? So you have to develop, and part of that is those relationships both ways. So that's cool to hear that you were able to do that with him and he was willing to work with you.
yeah, that's one thing I was going to hammer down right after. That's a good point you said, is like the relationship side is first. Like, if I didn't have a relationship with him, that's not something I would go do out of the blue, right? Like, it's something that's been developed through, working with him for a few years in spring training, and, the trust has been built, and he knows that I'm just there to try and help our guys get better and, help him and be a resource any way I can. And same thing, I'm just trying to learn from him too. So the relationship side is where you make the biggest gains for sure, with being able to do stuff like that, because the players have to trust you, and so do the coaches. Otherwise, you're not going to make as big an impact as you hope. So
how are you going about building those relationships ahead of time? I might be putting you on the spot here. I'm sorry if I am, but just like, how are you building those more personal relationships that can help you with those work relationships down the road?
Yeah, for sure. I think like AAA was a really good example of that last year, where, there's a 33-man roster, but we probably had 130 athletes come through, because that's just the nature of the beast at AAA. So I think for me, if I get a new guy who comes in, I'm just trying to go out of my way to make them feel welcome and know that I'm there for them. Like, it's not all about, what program they're doing. It's about, knowing who they are as a human being, and just trying to get them, know them on a personal level too. So that's something where I go out of my way and go hang out in the clubhouse with them, kind of just make conversation as much as I can. It doesn't have to be like planned, like we talked about with, the coaches too. It's super informal, but just having them know that I'm trying to get to know them and want to know more about who they are, I think is kind of my first step with, players and coaches on a personal level.
Yeah, I think too, there's so much opportunity for it. And I think the days are already so long, but if you show up a little bit earlier and you lift with your staff, or you hang around after the game, and like, maybe you don't take the first bus, maybe you take the second bus, or, however many buses there are, and just kind of hang out and talk with the coaches. Like when I was in AAA, our manager's office was right next to the weight room. So if there was a down moment, I'd just pop in, and it was usually him and our fourth coach, and just, hey, how you guys doing today? What's going on? Like, nothing strength and conditioning, nothing schedule wise, just kind of chat with them. And I think there's plenty of like informal pockets of time throughout your day that you can build those relationships. And for me, the area that I have the most success with coaches specifically is the weight room, right? It's like most of the coaches nowadays like to at least do something in the weight room. So like if you're there early and you're in there and they ask you a question, you can kind of help them out. Like it becomes another conversation, right? Like it starts with, hey, what should I do? Like, how's my squat depth look? Or how's my, bench press? Can you spot me? Whatever. And then it becomes like, oh, and by the way, so-and-so is having trouble with this. Like, you think we can help them? Like, I think those informal pockets become more formal conversations that lead to better relationships with the coaches and helps you with the players too.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you're working 9 to 5 with the guy, you're probably going to be nice to him because he's your coworker, right? But if you can go out and above and beyond, or go get a drink with the guy, or like you said, work out with him early, like that lets them know that you're really there for them and trying to at least go out of your way to build a relationship with them too, not just be a coworker, right? I'm trying to be, a good friend with you and someone that I trust with whatever I'm trying to come with. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. Like sometimes it's really hard and like you want to go home, see your significant other, or you've had a long road trip, you just want to go back to the hotel. But if the coach is like, hey, you want to go get dinner? Like always say yes, just go. Like, hey, sorry, I can't come home. I'll be home in an hour. Like I'm going to dinner. Like I promise in the long run, it will always help you.
100%.
So, okay. So now we've kind of talked through, you go through some screening, you've got a relationship with the coaches. Like what's the next step of applying drills to the players?
Yeah, I think kind of just that once you identify what the flaws that you're going to work on for that given player, it's, that communication side with the player, right? Because they have to be bought in and want to actually try and work on stuff. Otherwise, it's going to be fighting an uphill battle too. So I think once that buy-in has been set, it's a game plan for, how we can go about this day to day. And for me, that comes into play with warm-ups a lot of time. Like that's our best chance to get a lot of reps throughout the day. And it's a daily thing. So if we're talking reps, you guys lift maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but they do a warm up every single day. So in general, we try and do like general specific work prep to get guys ready. And for me, the stuff we're trying to do to make an impact on their skill is going to be at the very end where we're getting really specific and the intensity is high. And then they go right out to what they're trying to do with shorty in the cage or whatever a pitching coach is trying to work with them on. So that transfer is there. It's not getting really good at a warm up and then getting really good at a skill. It's transitioning the two. So there's some kind of blend there. Otherwise it doesn't really correlate. There's 2 different things versus one transitioning.
Do you ever use video or anything like that with the player? Like, hey, on the mound, we see this versus this, like, but we can get you here with these drills. Are you using video? Like, how are you like making the player buy in, so to speak?
Yeah, I think video is a really good one because guys will tell you they feel like they're doing one thing right, and then you show them video and they're doing something 100% different. So I think that's a good way to back it up that, I can tell you what I see, but if I can't really show you, then there's no proof in the pudding. So I think, like you said, showing guys video of what I'm seeing and what our coach is seeing helps them kind of understand and get on our level with be like, oh yeah, I'm actually doing that. So maybe I can try this to fix that, because I think if you show a guy bad mechanics, you would agree it's bad mechanics, and there's whatever way we want to attack it is a way to fix it. And I think that helps sum up too, like if you're actually making a change, like the video before and after is huge for kind of doubling down and backing up that what you're doing actually made a change and works versus just my say or whatever the coach says looks better. Like I think the athlete needs to know it actually is better too.
So obviously we would like everybody to just follow our advice blindly, but the reality of our situation is we get pushback, right? Especially certain guys, maybe not weight room guys or, just whatever the case. Like, have you had anybody push back where they're like, no, you're a weight room guy, like you don't know what you're talking about, like, or it takes them time to like buy into what you're saying? And if you have, like, how have you kind of navigated through that situation?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've had a few of those guys, and I just take a step back and take it with a grain of salt. And then, if they don't have that trust for me right away, like we said, we stick to what our level 1 project is to be strength coaches. So if I can give a guy a good warm up, right, and maybe some of the things that me and the position coach have seen, we can sprinkle into some movement stuff that doesn't seem real, baseball specific. But if we're trying to get a guy that, can't get out of his back hip, some hip mobility moves, we're still maybe potentially helping him with his skill, but still doing a warm up that he feels like is a strength move. So I think it's definitely a conversation, and that's the fun part, is the challenge of working with those guys too, because it's same thing. It comes down to relationships and trust. But if I can at least show them some things, maybe I get a guy there in a month and a half versus a week. But if I get a guy there, I still did my job too. So, it's not always a race to get a guy there as fast as we can. If the pushback's there, I'd rather at least take a little more time and do it right than, to have a guy push back the whole time I'm trying to get stuff done.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is like being on the same page with the baseball coach ahead of time and speaking the same language. And like, I'm sure that's helped you in the sense of like, hey, Shorty and I have collaborated. We've talked on this. Like, he sees this and I can help you get there. It has probably helped you, I would assume.
Yeah, right. That's a good point too. I think if the trust is more there with the skill coach, use the skill coach. Like, I've had plenty of times where I've had, our hitting coach go up to a guy and be like, I think you're struggling with this, and me and Derek talked, and this could be a reason why. So I think you should go maybe do some stuff with him for that. And then the buy-in might be higher. That's something they relate to more than if I came with it. So using your whole team to your advantage is huge too, whether that be, your trainer, position coach, manager, whoever has the best relationship with them and maybe can have more influence. It's not a bad thing if it takes someone else to help you out. That's the power of a team.
Yeah, and that's kind of the coming full circle moment for us, is like you have to put in the time to develop those genuine relationships ahead of time, and then in turn they will help you. Like, if you're on bad terms with the pitching coach and you're trying to get one of the pitchers to do something, like, the pitching coach is not going to have your back, and then you're like kind of out on an island by yourself, and you're like, well, can't do this. You know what I mean?
Right, 100%. Yeah, that's why I think we talked about like the conversations and everything, and it comes back to that relationship, and that's why I like sticking informal versus, this guy's always coming to me with something that's work related. Like, what does he need now from me? It's coming from a place of how can I help versus what do I need from you, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into kind of nitty gritty, like quote unquote sports specific drills. So this is where like my ignorance may come in, and if I ask you something stupid or I sound stupid, like, I apologize in advance. Just, it's fine. So some of the videos you had, you were using like Aqua bags and some of the other stuff like the shoulder bag. Kind of go into like what is like your determining factors for choosing like which piece of equipment you use, like which drills you use, and then maybe like the sets and reps, things like that.
Yeah, I got my kind of presentation pulled up here on the left, so just so I got a little bit of notes to go off of. But for me, it just comes down to a couple of things that we're trying to use to change movement, right? So we can change the task that they're trying to do. We can change the environment that we are doing the task in, and then we can change the organism or the player, what we're trying to do with them. So for me, the task would be, if I'm trying to get a guy to maybe decelerate and work on that strategy, I would give him something where I have to have more feedback with using my muscles eccentrically, right? So you talked about the Aqua Ball. For me, that's something we use a ton of, right? Because I can only speed up what I can slow down. So pretty much the Aqua Ball, for anyone who doesn't really know, it's like pretty much an empty med ball, and it's got water in it. So because it has water in it, it creates instability, right? So because that's unstable, my body has to create stability around it. Otherwise, it's going to make my pattern worse, right? We talk about like the RNT, like if I'm trying to fix the pattern, I might actually try and push them to making it worse. So I have to go the other way and make it better. So for me, that's a good one as far as if I'm talking about like eccentric capabilities. Like the Aqua Ball is a really big one because it gives you a lot of feedback on if I'm actually decelerating it. So the only cue I really give guys is I'm trying to make it have a big splash at whatever point I'm trying to get to. So if I'm trying to do a chop, I'd have it do a splash and then pull back, right? So I'm trying to work on decelerating it as fast as I can. So that'd be an example there, changing the environment for us. Like if a guy is maybe unstable in his hip or getting into a hip, I think we talked about like the RNT too, like we're trying to make maybe the ground or surface around him more unstable. So he has to create stability around that joint, right? So if I'm working on a front leg block with a pitcher and he's struggling with, posting up and getting some force back into himself on his front side, I might, stuff on an Air-X pad or sand or something where the barefoot, something where the surface is unstable, right? So I have to create more stability in my system to do it. Otherwise, I might fall over, honestly, if I do the exact same thing I've been doing in the first place. So we're just trying to manipulate the scenarios for our guys to, make changes to their body without having to think about something. So really don't give a lot of cues to guys. Usually we're trying to create changes with, understanding what we're trying to get to and then have them discover it themselves. Because if I tell a guy to, put his arm over his head when he's throwing, he might do it 10 different ways based on how he perceives that information. But if I give him something to do to try and do it, he'll probably discover it. And usually that stuff sticks a little bit better too.
So you mentioned like a general to a specific work prep for guys. So kind of go into like, all right, I know this guy's going to the cage at noon. Like, what time does he have to be there with you? What kind of general stuff are you doing? What kind of specific stuff? How long does that take? Like sets, reps, things like that.
Yeah. So I usually just ask for 15 minutes if I can get from a guy. I think if I can get that, I can do a lot of good work to have him get ready for whatever he has to do in the cage. So if we're talking about, you mentioned, that's not everyone's going to be a workaholic in the weight room, but if I can get a guy 15 minutes, I feel like I can do a lot of good stuff with him. So I try and start there. And, if we can get a little bit longer, that's fine. If not, that's all right too. But for me, it comes down to capacity, function, force, direction, and stability. So if we're talking general to specific, right, I think one thing we always talk about to start is getting our heart rate elevated. Like we want the tissue to be warm when we start our warm up for any movements we're trying to do. So usually just have our guys hop on 5 minutes of cardio or something like that to get heart rate elevated and some core temperature risen a little bit. And then we're working on the capacity thing. Like I talked about, our weight room side of things, strength first. If a guy doesn't have the capacity to do what we're asking him to, then, it doesn't matter what we have him do. He's not going to be able to do it. So that comes back to our correctives, trying to get range of motion, whether it be if a guy's struggling with his hips, we're trying to do some maybe 90-90 hamstring activation or stuff like that so we can get some range of motion there to do the work. After we do that, maybe some more like function stuff. So from there, we're trying to get him standing up, something that's maybe not sport specific, but it actually looks athletic, right? So I'm maybe standing up, doing a kettlebell sway, something like that, where we're trying to get maybe a different plane of motion too, sagittal, frontal, transverse plane. It's functional because you're not just sitting there trying to do a corrective. You're moving around, but it's maybe doesn't look like baseball yet. And then we add some force and direction to it. So that'd be like the Aqua Ball stuff where we're, ramping it up. It's going to be with speed and with some intensity because I've checked the other two boxes. So that might be like the Aqua Ball chops, some kind of med ball toss, something where we're producing force in a plane that looks like baseball. So that's why I use med balls a lot. I had a nice little picture of my face on the med ball wall in Reno for some target practice for guys. And for me, that's like the very last step heading out to the cage. So their first swing or first throw on the field should be already warmed up and ready to go. Like you shouldn't need 30 swings in the cage to warm back up for what you're doing. So that's kind of my goal with it, is general to specific, working on capacity, function, and then force, direction, and some explosiveness there.
Yeah, I really like that. And I'm like envisioning it in my head right now of like guy comes in, first time, your hitting coach like, hey, go see Derek. He's got some stuff for you. And you kind of run him through it. He goes to the cage like, damn, bro, I felt pretty good today. And then like by a week, it's like they're doing it themselves. Like they just walk in and you just watch and they're like, hey, what's up, Derek? And then they go do their thing, right? It's kind of cool that like I just got done recording another episode and we were talking about routines, and like if you push the right button and you get that guy to do something that makes him feel good when he's doing his baseball stuff, he's sold. Yeah. Like that's all they need, right? So
100%.
I'm sure that's been really cool for you. And then obviously it translates to the field, and then you're like the genius in the room, and they're like, this guy's a wizard, right?
No, I usually push the credit to Shorty for that. He's the one that helps him there. But I think for me, it's a good pitch. I tell guys we're getting swings without swinging, right? Like we're doing everything we need to do with our body except for swinging the bat, or we're doing throws without throws. So we have everything else in place with our foundation for our movement, and then we're only adding a bat or we're adding a baseball to your hand to finish it off. So if I can do everything else from the ground up well, it's going to make doing what I need to do with my hands, whether it be throwing or swinging the bat, a lot easier because I have that feel already. So guys really buy into that, and you can kind of see their eyes light up if I do stuff like this where it's actually specific to sport versus if I just tell a guy to go, do some dead bugs or something. They don't see the transfer there. So that helps a lot.
So one thing I'm pretty interested in, so I ordered an Aqua bag for us, or the Aqua Ball, and like where are you going to find new drills? Is it things that you're trying yourself and kind of feeling? Because the one thing I've seen, and it kind of applies with any new piece of equipment, is like somebody orders this equipment, right? And then they just give it to a player and they're like, oh, you're supposed to do this. And it kind of looks weird and like kind of not right. And you're like, you probably should have tried that yourself and experimented before you just gave it to a player. And like, so one, it's probably two-part here. Like, what resources are you using to find more of these drills? I know you mentioned Bleecker. Like, are there any others? And then two, are these drills coming from the hitting coach to you and you're just the one that's presenting them? Are you the one that's creating the drills and going over with the hitting coach? Like, where does that line get drawn on like who's doing what for those drills, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think to start for sure, made a good point there. I'm going to try and do everything myself first so I kind of know what I'm expecting from the athlete and how it feels myself. I think that creates a better understanding of what I'm trying to look for with their movement doing it, and then what actually where muscles are trying to hit to start. And then kind of just ideas. I mean, I follow a bunch of people on Twitter. That's pretty much like a free information. I can't say like all the people, but I think just following some people like that. I think Joey Cunha is a pretty good one. He was at 108. Now he's got his own with the farm system. They have quite a bit of content. And then, like I said, 108 with Bleecker, they have some stuff that they do and, content they're posting all the time. But I think one thing that's really helped me is kind of just understanding the concepts first, right? Because you can use the Aqua Ball a million different ways. But if you have a more in-depth understanding of what movement we're trying to do and how I can create change to that, I think that's helped me kind of sniper down some specifics. So Rob Gray is a pretty good reference. He just came out with this new book called Move I'm going through right now. And that's kind of an understanding of how we can, like we talked about, change the environment and change the task to get the specific things we want in our movement pattern. So if I know I'm trying to get a deceleration strategy, I can use the Aqua Ball obviously different than I would if I'm trying to, maybe work on my front leg post up or something like that. So I think just understanding the goal and then knowing the goal and maybe having an idea of how to get there has led me to, because you can do whatever you want with it, honestly. But trying it out first for yourself has kind of helped me sniper down some things where it's not just a free for all. And I want to come to a guy with 2 or 3 specific exercises. And if he doesn't like them, that's fine. I'll try something else the next day, but at least having a game plan to start versus, you don't want to lose a guy by doing 20 different things. And he's like, oh, this might just be eyewash.
Yeah, I think that's applicable in general in strength and conditioning, right? Is like we have to look for the adaptation we want, and then our ability to get there is endless, right? Like when I was young, it was like everybody has to squat, bench, deadlift. I don't care what you say. And now it's like, well, if I'm trying to get somebody, like I can take the squat, and the squat is really just how I'm getting to what I want, right? Like if I want somebody to be explosive, I'm going to squat, with bands or light and fast. If I want them to get strong, it's loaded. Like the way you get to the adaptation is probably, it can be interpreted depending on the individual, but the idea is like, just know the adaptation you want and then use whatever resources you have to get there. And like, if you don't have an Aqua Ball, I'm sure there's other ways that you can get deceleration patterns done. Like I think it's just your own creativity. And I think, like you said, trying things out is like, I bought this Aqua Ball for us, and like literally the rest of this offseason, I'm just going to play around with it. Our head guy, we're just going to play around with it. And like, if it looks stupid, like the player's probably going to think it's stupid. Like if it feels weird, like the player's going to think it's weird, right? Like we kind of have to present like a crisp 2 to 3, maybe 4 exercises. Here, try these, like you said, and then, okay, if you don't like it, like, hey, we'll try something tomorrow instead of like, oh, just do this. And it's like, which one of those worked? Like, I don't know. I did 20 exercises. Like, how am I supposed to know which one was the one? So I like that you said, try it yourself. And I'll definitely start following along with the content of those guys. And listening to Bleeker speak was really cool. Like our head guy and I were texting during, like, this is really good. He's got some good stuff. And it's just opening up your mind to like where baseball's going. Like it's just connecting the weight room to the field, and everybody talks about like bridging the gap and this and that. Like this is the way to do it. And going back to like our first point, like you can't forget you're a strength coach. Like you still need to do strength and conditioning stuff, but if you can at least understand this stuff, it can kind of help you. And then I think the other thing is, like I said, I've been talking a lot with our hitting coach. Like those relationships are going to help you learn. Because the thing is, like, your organization might preach something different than my organization does with hitting philosophy, technique, mechanics, all of that stuff. So if I just take the stuff you're saying and like, all right, everybody has to use the Aqua Ball because the Diamondbacks do it. It's like, well, that's not how we preach our hitting. Like you should use that relationship to kind of find like what the hitting coach or the pitching coach is preaching, what they're working on, and then figure out strategies from there. Agree?
Yeah, I think so for sure. It's all about how you can use it with whatever the situation is, right? Like it might be different player to player. Like one thing that worked for one player might not work for the other either. So I think you nailed it there with, just having understanding of just maybe the concepts of it. And I might not use the same strategy with each guy. And like you said, if the philosophy is different from the coach standpoint, I'm not going to come to him with the same thing. I think that's what makes a strength coach really good is, being adaptable and being able to kind of take any scenario and try and help benefit the player from it. Because it's, if I do one thing for every single guy, maybe 3 of them get better, but 10 of them don't. So I think just being adaptable and kind of just having a broad understanding of a lot of concepts, and then we can sniper down on whatever one is really going to work for that guy.
The people that are in my circle, I will like, depending on what I'm doing in the weight room myself, like trying, I will send it to them and be like, do you think this is stupid? Do you think it's worthwhile? So once I get the Aqua Ball, now that I have your number, like I'm going to annoy you. So sorry in advance, but like, you're just going to get a random video someday of like, do you like this drill or not? Like, so
100%, I'm in.
I'm giving you a fair warning right now that once it's here, like you're going to be getting random texts and you're going to be like, dude, leave me alone.
Yeah, hit me up with whatever. That's awesome. That's how we get better as a whole, right? So I'm looking forward to that. Text me.
Beautiful. All right. Now that I have your permission, let's move on.
You got it on recording.
All right, everybody, that concludes this episode with Derek. This is going to be part 1 of a 2-part episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. I think this kind of talk was long overdue, and, this is the way that professional baseball is going, collaborating between sport coaches and strength coaches. And like I said in the episode, I had heard Derek speak at our winter meetings event, and I figured it was good to get him on and have him elaborate on some of the points from his presentation. 3 things that I took from Derek in this episode: make sure you understand your job duties and prioritize those. Build personal relationships to help with professional relationships. And use video to help players make mechanical changes stick better. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.